Welcome to While We Were Distracted, the podcast where we explore topics that often get overshadowed in the rush of daily life. Please take a moment to like and subscribe, it really helps.
We take a stack of sources and really try to pull out the core knowledge you need on complex topics fast.
Hmm.
Today, we're diving into, well, the potentially unsettling world of voice to skull, or V2K, and remote neural monitoring, RNM.
Right. And look, for some listeners, this might sound like straight up science fiction.
Totally. But it's actually a subject that's getting more discussion. There are even dedicated websites popping up about it.
That's right. And for this deep dive, we've gathered a few different things. We got a scientific paper looking at V2K as a kind of cybercrime,
Okay.
a website that explains the basic concepts, a U.S. patent application, which is pretty fascinating, proposing a system to ID victims and attackers,
Wow, okay.
and some briefing docs just summarizing the key themes.
So our goal today for you, the learner, is really to get a handle on V2K and RNM, especially around this challenge of how do you figure out who might be experiencing this and who might be, well, behind it. We know you want to get up to speed, but without getting totally lost in the weeds. So we'll pull out the main points and maybe some of the more surprising details from what we've read.
Sounds good.
Okay, so let's start at the basics then. What exactly are V2K and remote neural monitoring, according to these sources we've got?
Okay, so voice to skull, V2K, it's described basically as transmitting sounds or voices directly into someone's head, into their mind.
Right. The patent even gets specific, saying it's voice or any sound, audible or subliminal, aimed right at the victim's hearing sense.
Exactly. And remote neural monitoring, or RNM, that's this pretty controversial idea that you can monitor brain activity remotely from a distance.
And the patent makes some pretty wild claims here, doesn't it?
It really does. It suggests the tech could, find someone's specific brainwave frequency, code it, lock onto it remotely.
Rock onto it.
Yeah, and then monitor it using software, maybe even satellites. It's quite something.
So some sources, like that New Vision website, hint these could be used for surveillance, maybe even mind control. But we absolutely have to stress the scientific validity, the proof for this. It's heavily disputed, often called pseudoscience.
That's a crucial point, very important. Though the Jane paper we looked at frames it differently. It talks about them as potential psychotronic weapons.
Psychotronic,
Yeah, manipulating the brain from afar, messing with the nervous system, conscious, subconscious, potentially causing real suffering.
And there's a whole bunch of terms floating around this, isn't there? Like synthetic telepathy.
Right. Electronic harassment, microwave harming. Hearing the patent calls that the Frey effect.
Ah, the Frey effect. Okay.
Yeah. And even things like voice of God weapon or brain-computer interfaces, BCIs, it's like a whole new vocabulary.
It really is.
And the patent, getting back to that, it specifically mentions the microwave auditory effect, the Frey effect, and neural coding as the sort of scientific basis for the identification system it proposes.
So it's trying to ground these claims in some existing science, even if the application is way out there.
Kind of, yeah. The Frey effect itself is real pulsed microwaves can make you perceive sound.
Ugh,
But the leap to targeted voice transmission, that's the controversial part.
got it. Okay, so moving beyond definitions, what about alleged applications? What do the sources say these things might actually be used for, and what are the big concerns?
Well, New Vision mentions things like surveillance, psychological warfare, and even non-consensual experiments on people.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like monitoring thoughts, causing auditory hallucinations, maybe trying to influence behavior.
Which, immediately sets off huge ethical alarms, doesn't it? Privacy violations, human rights, especially for people who feel targeted.
Absolutely. And the Jane paper highlights that worry too, that these methods could just become another tool for organized crime, for terrorist groups.
That's a really grim thought.
It is. And they mention U.S. media reports about these kinds of alleged cybercrimes and how hard it is for law enforcement to even investigate them.
Yeah, I can imagine. The patent even brings up past FBI probes into similar alleged attacks, right? And that Navy Yard shooter case.
That's right. It cites a CNN report saying the gunman claimed he was experiencing low-frequency attacks. So, even if the tech itself is debated, these ideas are definitely circulating.
Which brings us, I guess, to the really unique part of that patent, this proposed method for identifying victims and operators.
Exactly. That's where it gets really specific, trying to offer a practical solution, almost.
Okay, so walk us through that. How does this patent think you can tell who's who?
Well, the core idea It relies on the assumption that a victim thinking an attack thought back at the operator would react differently. Or rather, the operator would react differently to receiving it than the victim would to sending it. Does that make sense?
Sort of, like detecting a mismatch in reactions to the same mental event.
Pretty much, yeah. It proposes a system to measure these different psychological responses.
Okay, interesting. So what pieces make up this system?
Right, so you've got a polygraph meter, a PM, basically a lie detector, to check if the person being tested is truthful about the operator's reactions.
Okay, standard polygraph.
Yeah, though it mentions maybe using digital ones or even fMRI for better accuracy. Then there's an ISA, the Identification System Administrator, who runs the test,
Got it.
and the TP, the tested person, the alleged victim, who ideally needs to be, stable and cooperative.
Right. And then this computer with all those databases. That seems key.
Absolutely key. It's got these classified databases of what it calls psychological attacking content, split into 7 categories.
7. What kind of stuff are we talking about?
Okay, so category A is disgusting items. The tested person imagines sending something gross, like
Yeah.
the patent literally says fresh stool for breakfast.
Wow, okay. That's vivid.
Right. The idea is the operator would be disgusted, but the sender wouldn't have the same reaction to their own imagined stool.
Uh-huh. Okay, what else?
Category B is funny items. Thinking of jokes meant to make the operator laugh, but maybe not the tested person because humor's subjective.
Right, trying to trigger a laugh response. Makes sense. What about the more intense stuff?
Yeah, categories C and D go there. C is anti-political trend and anti-religious belief items.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Imagine insulting a political or religious symbol, maybe even combining it with the disgusting stuff, like the stool example again, to provoke anger based on the operator's beliefs.
Okay.
And D is countries and races items. Imagining something awful happening to the operator's country or race, like a nuclear explosion, to trigger anger. The patent examples are pretty strong, kind of disturbing, honestly.
Definitely sounds designed to push buttons based on identity. What are the last few categories?
E's foreign clubs or organizations.
Mm-hmm.
Accusing the operator, in thought, of being part of, say, a terrorist group, expecting a strong denial if they are involved somehow, but not from an innocent person.
Okay, interesting logic.
Is languages and dialects. The idea is, if the victim thinks in a language the operator doesn't know, maybe Cantonese versus Mandarin, the harassment might slow down or stop.
Uh-huh, like jamming the signals.
Kind of. And finally, G is scientific knowledge. Thinking about complex science stuff like converting hexadecimal to binary that the operator might not understand, again, hoping to disrupt things.
So the tested person cycles through these mental attacks, and the system tries to see if the operator reacts in the predicted way. How's it tracked?
Exactly. There's a controller that counts successful identifications where the predicted reaction seems to happen versus failures. The patent suggests needing a high ratio, like 9 successes to 1 failure, before you can be confident. It even compares it to, like, engineering control systems. And the tested person interacts via touchscreen and HMI, answering yes, no, about the operator's perceived reaction while hooked up to the polygraph, and the ISA watches that readout.
It is just a remarkably detailed process laid out there, trying to use thoughts and physiological feedback loops. Very, very specific.
It is. And the patent is careful to say these are all thought experiments using private database content, no actual verbal attacks, to avoid causing real insult.
Right, that's an important caveat. Okay, switching gears slightly, the Jane paper talks about how people might actually realize they're experiencing V2K. What signs do they mention?
Well, they say individuals might start noticing things when they're alone or trying to concentrate, like reading or working. It often starts, apparently, as whispering sounds that get clearer over time, almost like someone trying to talk to them.
And it's not just sounds, is it? There are other reported symptoms.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Mentally, they list things like depression, delirium, hearing voices, obviously, big mood swings, pulling away from people, feeling weird emotions like induced anger or fear, sleep problems, memory loss, even feeling like thoughts are being blocked.
That sounds incredibly distressing. What about physically?
Physically, headaches, sweating a lot, insomnia again, bad itching, arthritis, blurry vision, teeth grinding, pain, feeling short of breath or like you're choking, weird dreams, shaky hands, a whole list.
Jeez.
And they also mention this odd thing where the voices might make people say or shout things they don't remember later.
It really paints a picture of profound disruption for someone who believes this is happening to them. Do the sources give any idea who might be doing this?
The Jane paper, citing Derek Robinson from FFCHS, suggests it could be a range of people. corrupt business types, maybe rogue government elements, private citizens, acting alone or in groups, or even through companies.
So basically, it could be anyone with the means and motive if this technology is real and accessible. Very hard to pin down.
Extremely hard.
Mm.
And there's no official count of victims, though the paper mentions over 300 cases identified in the U.S. in the last decade or so. And it mentions Dr. Alan Ducker's thought that maybe marginalized groups are targeted more often.
Right. Lastly, did the sources offer any prevention tips? Anything people can do?
Jane et al. Give a few suggestions, but they're pretty general cyber safety things mostly, like avoid anonymous forums, maybe use Google alerts for your name, be careful sharing info online, teach kids about cyberbullying.
Standard online safety advice.
Pretty much. They also mention binaural beats as something that might offer relief, but they're clear none of this is foolproof.
Okay, so wrapping this up, we've taken this deep dive into V2K and remote neural monitoring. Definitely complex, definitely controversial. We've pulled from different perspectives, scientific papers, websites, that very detailed patent.
Yeah, we've covered the alleged tech itself, how it might supposedly be used for crime or harassment, the really tough experiences people report, and this quite elaborate patent proposal for identifying victims and operators using psychological triggers and polygraphs.
And we have to circle back to that point about scientific validity. Like New Vision notes, a lot of the core claims about the tech itself still very much debated, not mainstream science.
Absolutely. But regardless of whether the tech works exactly as described in some sources, the ideas themselves, the allegations, they raise really important ethical and privacy questions, don't they?
They really do. Which leads us to maybe a final thought for you, the learner, to chew on. With technology getting so deeply woven into everything and everything being so connected, how do we even begin to deal with the potential misuse of neurotechnologies, even ones that are still theoretical right now? How do we protect both security and individual mental privacy going forward when technology is moving so fast?
That's the big question, isn't it? Something that needs a lot more thought for sure.
Well, thank you for taking this deep dive with us.
Thank you.
Until our next exploration.
Please take a moment to like and subscribe. It really helps.